everybody. We're going to simplify trigonometric expressions by writing in terms of sine and cosine. Sometimes we'll do that, and using our trig identities. So for the first one, I'm going to write this as cosine over sine plus sine over cosine all over 1 divided by sine squared, because that's what cosecant is. So I wrote everything in terms of sine and cosine. I'm going to take the numerator and write my common denominator, which is sine times cosine, and therefore I'm going to cross these two and multiply, and I'm going to get cosine squared plus sine squared. And then I still have 1 over sine squared. Now on these, if you have, this equals 1 from our Pythagorean identity, so I'm just going to make that a 1. And I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over sine theta cosine theta divided by 1 over sine squared theta. And if you recall in elementary school, when you had something like this, you would keep, change, and then flip. So then what's going to happen is sine goes into sine squared 1 times. So you just have sine. And I'm going to come up in here, and that's going to be sine over cosine, and that equals tangent. And we simplified. Okay, the next one is similar. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and write in terms of sine and cosine. So this is 1 over cosine squared. And for the denominator, I'm going to write sine over cosine plus cosine over sine. Then I'm going to take my denominator and write it with a common denominator, which would be cosine theta, sine theta. Then you cross these two, multiply. You're just saying what times the old denominator gives you the new denominator, and that's sine, so you multiply it by the numerator, so that's going to be sine squared, and then you do it for cosine, and so that's the denominator, and we still have 1 over cosine squared in the numerator. Okay, so again, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, and so basically we have 1 over cosine squared divided by 1 over cosine times sine. And so that's the same as 1 over cosine squared, and then you flip, change the sign and flip the second part. Alright, and then cosine goes into cosine squared once, so we have cosine of theta here, and now we have sine over cosine left, which equals tangent again. Okay, and the next one is this one. So my common denominator for these two is both of these together, and that's going to be cosecant theta minus 1. That's your a plus b times a minus b, which equals a squared minus b squared. And then I'm going to cross these, so I have a common denominator. So that's cotan of theta times cosecant of theta minus 1 plus cotan of theta times cosecant of theta plus 1. All right. And as you recall, our Pythagorean identities, this equals cotan squared of theta. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and erase so I have time. So I have more space. I'm going to put cotan squared of theta under each piece. So it just makes it a little better right here. So I'm putting the cotan squared of theta under each of these pieces. And what happens is cotan is going to go into cotan squared once. Same thing for here. Well, it's just going to be cotan. Sorry. So, now let's look at the numerator. So we have the same denominator, which is cotan of theta. And I'm going to write this out. We have cosecant of theta minus 1 plus cosecant of theta plus 1. And what happens is the ones cancel. And so we have 2 cosecant of theta over cotan of theta. And I don't know if let's see if we can write this now in terms of sine and cosine. So this is 2, the numerator is 2 over sine. The denominator is cosine over sine. We can cancel out the sines. So we have 2 over cosine, which equals 1 over cosine of secant. So this would be 2 times secant of theta. And the last one we have is this one, and it's very similar. Luckily, it's already in terms of sine and cosine. So my common denominator is just these two multiplied, which is going to equal 1 minus sine squared. And then we're going to cross these two. So we get cosine times 1 plus sine minus cosine times 1 minus sine. All right, and I think I'm going to go ahead and write this. We could do it different ways, but let's go ahead and, there's different ways you can do all of these. This is just one way. I'm going to go ahead and write that as cosine squared. And if you put this cosine under each of these pieces, separate these out, the cosines will cancel. Or you could actually factor out the cosine. Let's just do it that way. If I factor out a cosine, I'm going to get 1 plus sine minus 1 minus sine. And then put the cosine squared underneath. So basically, the cosine goes into cosine squared once. So you're just left with cosine. And now if I write my numerator out, and distribute this negative, what's going to happen here is 1 minus 1 is 0. Negative sine plus sine is 0, so you get 0 over cosine of theta, which equals 0. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.